Some of our recent episodes and guests have focused on growth and scale in the largest and most successful organizations out there. I think like Ingram Micro with $50 billion in revenue, or Mercer, which is a consulting company, has thousands of employees, operates in dozens of countries. Today, we're going the other way. We're going early stage. And my guest is Sam Johnston. He is the co-founder, Chief Launch Officer, and CMO of Nth Venture, which is a venture studio that launches companies from scratch. And so we talk about Sam's perspective on the ingredients for success in early stage, and then also his company's unique approach to launching companies. That includes talent acquisition, product market fit, speed to market, et cetera. And one of the many things I took away from our conversation is his focus on incremental wins and planning. Enjoy. Hi, Sam. How are you? Happy New Year.
Yeah, I'm good. Nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
Sure thing. So I'm really excited to talk to you today. In an episode that just dropped this week, I spoke with a Fortune 100 Chief Digital Officer, CMO. So he's thinking about problems at the largest scale imaginable in the tens of billions. And we're going to talk about marketing and growth here in today's episode, but you're starting and you're thinking about companies at a really early stage. When I got to know you a little bit, Sam, offline, I got to learn about the model of your venture studio. I got really excited because you focus on profitability and growth right away. If you don't mind, to start us off, give a little bit of your background and then describe sort of the goal and mission of your venture studio, Nth Venture.
Yeah, 100%. So I'm Sam. I'm the Chief Launch Officer. That's kind of a title we've made up, but overseeing the studio operations at Nth Venture, and then also CMO for the overall brand of it. I'm a kind of marketer by trade, sales marketing, the commercial angle of things. I've been CMO, CEO, down the ranks below there, and was lucky enough to do some really interesting consultancy work across lots of big name organizations as well as some of the smaller ones. From Wales originally, that's why the accent is a little bit different, living and married in North Carolina now, so enjoying the US. And before that, military, and then got to study in Wales, Norway, US, and do a bit of studying undergraduate and postgraduate. But on the topic of Nth Venture, so we are a venture studio. That's a term that maybe not a lot of people kind of understand what that means, but we launch companies from scratch that solve problems in the market, create value for our people and our investors, and it gives founders the support, the environment it needs to succeed, whilst also providing investors access to creation earlier on. And by kind of creating cohorts of startups from scratch, where we think of the ideas within the studio, we're able to offer equity to investors, partners in all of our businesses. And example for the next cohort, they'll be getting kind of an allocation of cash from the investment that we raise ahead of schedule, and then we also use that funds to sustain the studio through that experience. But it really provides people with kind of diverse exposure to day one startups, alongside all the professional partners like us within the organization where we have skin in the game.
Yeah, it's some of my most fun experiences of my career were in really early stage stuff. And it sounds like you're incubating a bunch of different ideas. Maybe before I ask some specific questions about how many cohorts are you launching in a year, or how do you think about that?
Yeah, there's obviously a capacity problem and a time problem attached to this. We don't want to become a massive machine and industrialize it. We have a really talented core team of people, and we want to bring those to bear. So generally speaking, there might be 2 to 3 cohorts going on throughout the year. Each cohort takes roughly kind of 3 to 6 months, depending on the businesses and the necessary build outs that are needed there. And the cohort sizes would be between 3 and 6. So again, it depends on if we have the ideas available and they're great ideas and we validated them and we're ready to move on them, then we'll bolt them in. But we don't want to go over 6 because there's only so much time in the week, right? And we want to make sure that all the founders are getting the necessary treatment as they go through the process and getting the support that they need. And we've designed our own kind of RIP is in our launch process, right? So we've got a whole project base that we take these people through so they know what they need to do by when, who they need to do it with, and how they're going to get to the end goals. And that takes a certain amount of time. And the minimum for that is probably 3 months if you just were every single day hitting everything down as you went. But all likelihood is that there's pivots, optimization, lots of testing going on, and maybe the business moves in a slightly different direction, which we're completely happy with if it does, which kind of stretches it out to roughly 6 months usually. That's kind of the timescale.
So probably one of the most important things for you to focus on this really early stage is product market fit, and maybe define what that means to you. If you want to use an example from one of your existing companies, that would be great. But what is satisfactory to you that this is a company really worth scaling?
It's a great question. Well, the standard kind of official term, I guess, of the official description of product market fit is in the degree to which people or products can satisfy a strong market demand, depending if it's a product or a service. And that makes a lot of sense. But to me, it's a little bit deeper than that, and in particular within our studio. So for us, it's that we have verified that the product or service serves a valid market pain and that customers are happy to pay a price that meets the necessary margins of that business. That basically validates that you have a product market fit and it's a business model that's going to survive. We'll do some of that work early on, and we'll do some of that work whilst we're in the studio and going through the process. So we can't assess full product market fit early on because we don't have prototypes. We don't have any kind of service to provide people to get feedback. But what we do have is a hypothesis. And we bounce that through primary research. We'll do user testing. We'll go out there and we'll do some surveying. We have built a phenomenal advisory board around Nth Venture itself. But then we also have all of the advisory boards across each of the portfolio businesses, and they support us with feedback. And these are industry experts in their individual fields. So we're able to build a business case, red team, blue team it, make sure that we've really hammered this thing down to ensure the hypothesis is sound based on data, primary and secondary research, all the surveying I was just mentioning. Then we'll bounce that off industry experts, get feedback. And if we're kind of assured that this has had a good business analyst approach to it, then we'll move that into the studio process. Whilst we're going through the studio process, of course, we're validating and optimizing all the time. And there's kind of a product market fit loop. Here's the hypothesis. It's based on good data and has had a really good critique and it's been bounced off a lot of people. Now we'll go ahead and survey more individuals within the target market, make sure that they're happy, that they're giving us any insights, and we're changing our MVP. But if we're happy this is what we think we should take to market, we'll then take it into a soft launch phase and then actually get client feedback from it. And we'll keep doing that loop until we get to a point where, as I said, it's a verified product or service that fits the market pain, that customers are happy to pay a price that meets that necessary margin for the business.
So what type of businesses are you incubating? It could be e-commerce, B2B, SaaS. Where's your sweet spot? Maybe provide an example so folks listening in can wrap their head around a specific business.
Yeah. So we don't focus on a specific industry. We're not a kind of a health tech or a SaaS incubator. We don't do that. What we're focused on are businesses that can be can immediately get to market without a massive amount of investment. So that might be service led. That might be a tech stack where we can build it no code, or we can get it to market and validate it pretty quickly without having to spend huge amounts on development costs. And usually these businesses are dependent on having extreme depth in industry knowledge. So they're dependent on the person knowing the most about the skill, the trade, the pain in the market. And examples of that are we have a boutique financial and advisory investment firm, and we've got incredible team members in there that just they blow everyone else out of the water with their experience in the market, and we're able to wrap a business around that expertise and provide an amazing service. Then we have a company called Audley, which is a podcasting and audiobook as a service provider, and again, the talent that they've got in that organization is next to none. It's incredible. But there's tech stack, there's infrastructure to get that sort of business to market, and we've done that. Now they're generating good income, and off they are into the portfolio. There's a real mix. So we have a development organization that focuses on AI, machine learning. We've also got a recruitment firm within the portfolio. We have a learning and development company called Certed, which does onboarding and upskilling templates to support skilled labor within their marketplace. So it's quite varied. The industry, the kind of service isn't that much of a issue to us. It's more, can this business be profitable without just endless investment rounds? Can it get to product market fit quickly? Can we hire in the talent to be able to be the experts in the industry in it? And then do we, is this something that we want to go into? Do we enjoy this kind of business? Because the difference between us and an incubator or an accelerator or even some of the venture studios is that we aren't there just as a consultant or as an advisor to the business. We actually support those businesses and we execute on the business plan alongside them. So we will be doing the marketing, we'll be setting up the infrastructure and all the administration of setting up a business. We'll be helping them to hire the talent into the business and then getting those early adopters in and so on and so forth. So we're very engaged and involved in it. So we want to make sure it's something that we're excited about.
I love that. I've been jotting down as over the last minute or so some of the ingredients in the recipe. It sounds like there's being able to identify product market fit quickly. There's expertise. There's can you bring your tech stack, the existing tech stack you have to bear? Can you recruit the right folks? Do they have depth and knowledge? Do you have skin in the game? All of these things seem to be ingredients for success. I also wonder about speed to market. It feels like that would be an important criteria for you because you mentioned bandwidth at the outset. You have a strong, solid team, but you're not endless resources. So how do you think about that when it comes to either burn rate or dividing your attention across companies? Are you thinking like if this business doesn't grow fast, it probably won't happen at all? Or am I thinking about that wrong?
No, it's a great question. And the consideration is, I guess, not just from our perspective, because we don't want to be spending, a year to 3 years on something that it still hasn't gotten to market and hasn't generated cash, because where we ourselves, want to get to value as quickly as possible. But for the business owners and the presidents and the early team, the founders that come into this, there's going to be a J curve in earnings, which is, going to be something that they need to be comfortable with. And the longer that J curve stays below the earnings that they need to support their families, the more risk that the business dies. So for us, it's about quality of launch over speed as such. And we can and have condensed that business launch cycle from what might be 1 to 3 years for a founder to get to a point where they got product market fit, generating good revenue and moving on, to that 3 to 6 month window. And to get that MVP product market fit as quickly as possible, we will then build out the infrastructure of the business, validate, get a solid go-to-market strategy, and support them. But it's a big consideration. So speed to market is important to us, but it doesn't, not at the behest of a quality of getting to market. We want to make sure that when it lands, it is serving a pain and it can commercially stand up on its own 2 feet.
Yeah, you've done a real fair assessment and given it a shot to succeed. Totally. That makes sense.
100%.
Sam, where's your head at today, as opposed to 6 months ago, 2 years ago, about the importance of your team getting into an office? Is that a thing you have a point of view on?
Yeah. And I'm a bit of a unique scenario in that regard. So I've been working from distance for, a good amount of time, probably 4 or 5 years now. But in my perspective, it's a nice to have, having people in the office. It's really nice to be able to be face to face and use a tangible whiteboard. Those things are nice to have. But in our experience, bringing kind of the best talent nationally to a project or to a business often means that it simply isn't plausible. So we prefer talent over geography, and having worked remotely myself and already, getting ready to launch what'll be upwards of our 14th business, going through the next cohort coming up in March, we've kind of validated that we can use a from distance team to be very effective. And one of our missions, our purpose as an organization, you might see it on our website and whatnot, but it's to set talented people free through the power of ownership. And what that means is that in order to do that, we have to bring the right people into the fold, of course. They're people that are driven, They're the sort of person that regardless of where they are, what time they're working, or with who they're working, they're going to put in the hard graft and they're going to be successful. And that's the kind of people that we're looking to bring in as founders into these organizations. And for those people, they want autonomy and they want to be treated like the high caliber professionals that they are. And we're a great place for them because as long as the work's being executed on, we don't care where you are, when you're doing it, how you're doing it. In reality, it's outcome orientated. And the kind of the comp model that we use as an organization is a bit different. So we don't pay wages. As an example, we have a talent profit pool, which is a profit split within the organization. Everyone in the organization has that split of profit. And then they also an equity share. So they all are owners in the business in a meaningful way. And what that means is that every little decision, every choice is based around cash flow. It's based around getting to profitability and then reinvesting back into the business to get scale. But it means that, is an office necessary? Is that overhead a necessary thing for an organization that's a startup, a small business like that? Probably not. We have a couple of hubs around the US that have organically happened just because we found amazing talent in those places. And we like to meet up for coffees. We'll do a little bit of work from a coffee shop sometimes just to get out of the office, the home office, and to see some people, which is nice. But most of the work happens in this kind of environment where we're sat behind a screen and making the magic happen.
Yeah, I hear that, especially at an early stage. Everyone's locked in. They're just a few people. Everyone's cash flow focused. And I love the performance model. I mean, that's near and dear to my heart. Centerfield's a performance advertising company. Everything we do is based on performance. I wonder, I suspect a lot of folks listening to this are pretty intrigued by the model and would love the opportunity to be, set up to be a co-founder in a new venture where, they have autonomy and all those things you said. I want to ask you kind of like the ideal makeup that you look for. But before I do, I kind of want to ask you the inverse of that, kind of a reality check on who's the type of person that this isn't for.
Yeah, I think this isn't for somebody who is maybe has dreamed about starting a business, but really deep in themselves knows they like the safety and security of a 9 to 5. Because starting a business in any environment is not an easy thing, and it's stressful, and there's no guarantees. It'll mean lack of earnings for a period of time. It'll mean sacrifice, and if deep down you like the idea of starting a business, but you're not the sort of person really that would want to sacrifice that 9 to 5 cut off and then, spend quality time doing the other things in your life, it's probably not for you. And no disregard to those people. As these organizations scale up, they're going to need people that are experts in their field and really, want to do just a task and do that, which is fine. And I've got a lot of respect for those people. But if you're that kind of person, I'd probably say a founder in an organization that doesn't have any kind of funding to pay your wage until you get to product market fit and start to generate income, it's not something for you.
Yeah, there's a quote that I was looking up while you're talking. I found it, which is entrepreneurship is living few years of life like most people won't, so that you can spend the rest of your life like most people can't. Is that kind of?
That's true. Yeah, got to do the things other people aren't willing to do to get the things that they can't have. So it takes graft. It takes a lot of time and effort, and you have to. I'm sure we'll come on to what is it that this person has, but what they don't have is a safety and kind of retractive mentality.
Mm-hmm. Well, maybe where we can focus on what you're really looking for is when you're asking about like depth of expertise in a market. Let's say you have an idea about, you have an insight about the landscaping industry or podcasting or whatever. How do you feel like a co-founder or one of the early folks like really knows what they need to know?
A resume is a good tool. Don't get me wrong. LinkedIn is a good tool. It tells me kind of where you've been. Not so much how it's gone or what but it's a good indicator that if you've been in those places and those organizations have done their due diligence and you've stayed that amount of time and maybe you've listed off some of your achievements and we back check some of that's a good picture. But it really comes to when we're doing our interviewing process and we start to speak to people. We have advisory boards attached to these businesses, and when we put a president in play, we can bring some of those industry experts to bear to ask some of those tougher questions. Because I certainly wasn't an expert in packaging and logistics, but we've launched a bespoke packaging and logistics company called Merchant Boxes, which is just doing incredible stuff in the market, working with kind of A-list celebrities to bring to market cool new products, working with influencers, working with like mainstream brands to bring brand new unboxing experiences to people and to kind of increase their customer loyalty and whatnot alongside that. But I wasn't the right person to ask questions about that industry. So we had advisors and people that could come on board to quiz on that. We lean on that kind of advisory board approach.
So, unfortunately, we are talking during a difficult economic environment. I can say that today I reside in Seattle, and this is probably going to go live in February. But where I live in Seattle, over the last few days, Microsoft and Amazon have announced large layoffs. You and I, we don't claim to be economists. At least I don't. But there's a you either, I guess. But there's a pretty good chance, like the first half of the year, longer is going to get pretty ugly. And so, that obviously presents opportunities for sure in the market. In the last recession, in advertising, performance advertising companies did really well, as an example. But how do you recommend early stage businesses best prepare themselves over the next 6 months?
It's a good challenge. I would say that. Again, I'm not an economist. I can't give you a forecast, but we have voices around us in Venture that are economists, the people that they're lecturers at serious universities, and they're telling us good information. But I can listen to that, and I can be aware of that, and that affects how maybe we take some businesses to market. But in reality, regardless of the market conditions, I'm going to be grinding away, and I'm going to be producing, and I'm going to grow through it. And it's I don't have a huge impact personally on the economy overall. I like to think I do, but I don't. But regardless of what happens, we're going to move kind of through it. All that being said, if you are a startup and you are thinking about what's happening ahead, hopefully in February, maybe it all turned out to be fine and nice, and this conversation is redundant. But if it is a case where it looks like there might be a shadow ahead, then focus on cash flow and profitability. Don't rely on sort of endless investment cycles, and produce a plan or roadmap that outlines a validated MVP, not the entire product or service. This might mean that the MVP kind of becomes the minimum amount that is needed to meet a market pain where clients are happy to pay that price, that encompasses the appropriate margin that you need. And this will produce client testimonials, reviews, referrals, cash flow, brand growth, and give the product roadmap and insights necessary to build out the full product. But don't be focused on, I need to create this whole vision and take that whole thing to market. If you can provide value in the market immediately and generate revenue and validate that people are willing to pay for that, take that thing to market and then get feedback and build out the product alongside that. I've seen quite a few founders that have spent a lot of money and a lot of time trying to build something that was 100% the right thing to do a year ago when they started this kind of journey, but they weren't releasing things, they weren't testing, they weren't getting feedback. And then by the time that year comes around, there's other competitors, the market's moved on, there's new technology, and the product wasn't a product market fit piece of software. So that's one thing I would say. Think about what is the minimum thing I need to take to market to solve a pain, to provide value and start generating cash. With that in mind, don't scale your team too far ahead with expectations of investment rounds to come. If you assume for the worst and build a resilient business that can cash flow back into itself and reinvest, it will give you better valuation. It will mean that you can sustain whatever's going to come around the corner. And if you do want the investment round, amazing, you're in a better position to go ahead and do that, in a stronger position to negotiate. And then the other one is kind of, I guess, related to the last one, but building a user testing group early on whilst building out the MVP, or at least even whilst you're building the plans for the MVP. If you can survey, if you can bounce those ideas off tangible target market audiences, you can ensure that you're going to bring an MVP to market that will actually be successful. So hopefully those are a couple of things that people can think about that will help them to weather any storm ahead.
I think those are all the right things. And yet at the end of the day, you mentioned this earlier, being a founder, being a president, early stage, it's all stressful. And there are going to be times when any founder, no matter how good things are, there's uncertainty, there's doubt, there's concern. And so you're seeing this at scale because you have a bunch of different portfolio companies. How do you deal with, and how does your team deal with the emotional side of the equation, and how do you help founders through tough times?
Yeah, I think within the businesses in our portfolio, it's a bit of a different environment to businesses outside of the portfolio that are general, just out there, maybe some of the listeners. So for our businesses within the studio, firstly, I think I might have mentioned this earlier, but we aren't an incubator. We're not an accelerator. We're not a soft touch venture studio. Here within the Emp Venture Studio, we're executing on the business alongside you, the president, you, one of the co-founding team members, meaning that there's a level of esprit de corps, not just amongst the founding team in the business, but also amongst the studio staff and the team, and even the wider cohort of businesses that are all going through this at the same time. And that provides kind of tangible morale boosts and a support network for these people. And they also have access to and speak with all the presidents across the wider portfolio that have already launched, that have been exactly in the steps that they were in, going through the same journey. So they have it's a different environment to somebody who is solo going at it. If you are solo going at it, I would say make sure that you have a good plan. Founders often, and they'll feel at times that everything's inside their head, and maybe they're alone in like the execution of the leadership of this. Maybe they've got a small team, they're trying to get it through, and they need to look like they know what they're doing all of the time. It's in their head. But when we have a kind of step-by-step plan out of exactly what's going to happen and by when and who's going to do it, for me at least, seeing the plan out visually, here's what we're going to achieve over the next 3 months, it gives me a little bit of peace of mind that even if I'm having a wobbly day, I know what I need to do. I know where I need to turn up and who's doing what by when. So you can help your future self by setting a nice little project plan for the launch of the business, for the whatever you're doing, the new product development, whatever you bring into market. So it's different for businesses that are in our portfolio versus outside of it. And our founders, we try not to ever put them in what you'd call like a box 4 scenario where they don't know what the problem is, what the solution is, or how to get there. That's kind of the worst scenario, right? If you're in that situation, it's difficult. And business management development programs will deliberately try and put people into those situations so they can figure out and see how they react in them. But our founders, at least with the programming that we have, the support network and how we go about doing it, they know what they're doing, where they're going, and how they're going to get there, which gives them peace of mind.
And there also has to be some comfort in a playbook that has been applied and worked elsewhere. You've talked about the importance of planning and kind of step-by-step incremental growth throughout this conversation. And I think that's one of my biggest takeaways for founders, whether they're part of a venture studio, accelerator, bootstrapping, anything.
Yeah.
So with that, Sam, I want to say thanks so much for joining me today.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Thanks for having me.